Hello everyone, welcome back to the Dan Fan Channel. We got a little bit of news, kind of spicy news that I want to talk about today. I am a little bit late on this story, but it is important to talk about. It's anime related, localization related. Discotek, a localizer company, actually fired somebody. They fired him because of very aggressive comments that he made towards one of the anime that he was responsible for dubbing and localizing. Lovely Complex, definitely not a series that you would want to make very negative, aggressive statements on. But just so that you understand the full context behind it, I have some articles pulled up and we'll go through his comments together and you'll be able to see why he got fired. So these comments actually come from his Patreon account, and I find it quite shocking that it didn't occur to him a lot of the Patreon subs might have been a fan of Lovely Complex. But regardless, he felt like that was a safe place to share these negative thoughts on the story, and bragged about how the dub changes that they made to the anime actually made the story better, and saying that they have to change the story with their dub because the series is really bad and transphobic, apparently. Frankly, having the dub come out this good in the end is a little frustrating. Anyone who watched this show as a kid and has fond memories of it and revisits the dub will think, wow, it's just as good as I remember. No, it isn't. We made it good. This show sucked. The amount of rough edges we shaved off on this are entirely invisible, unless you buy the Blu-ray and turn on the dub while also keeping the Japanese subtitles on, which allows you to listen to our edits in real time. I think we turned an unremarkable and frustrating 3 out of 10 show into a pretty funny and mostly watchable 7 out of 10. I want to show off what we did, however, I don't really want to recommend that people watch Lovecom in order to see it. So there's a lot of back pats, of course, in this rant that he goes on his Patreon, basically saying that it's not because of the author or the story or the characters or the manga series. None of that is why this series is popular. It's because of us dubbing it. We made it good. We did all the work. And essentially making an argument for changing things in the dub to make it better, which is not unusual. We have seen people from Funimation also say this, that they insert these jokes or these things into a dub because it makes it better. And it doesn't always make it better. Most anime fans who notice these changes will actually say, that made it worse. It should have been the original translation and it would have been fine. A lot of the feedback I saw was negative, so I don't know who told you the changes were good. So there was a response about this, because there had to be a response, because this guy upset an entire fandom in a matter of seconds. Basically said, we are aware of the comments made by a contractor that worked on Lovely Complex. The English version was made with the supervision and approval of the show's original producers. Dubs commonly punch up comedy and smooth over rough patches so that the end product aligns with the show's intended audience and provokes the intended response. And there will always be shades of gray when adapting a work. Anyone expecting exact fealty to the Japanese dialogue should be watching the subtitles, which Discotek has already presented, with as little alteration as possible when translating from a very different language. We are deeply disappointed with this individual's lack of professional discretion and will not be working with him in the future. We will continue to work on future projects with an eye towards satisfying as many fans as possible. Thank you for your continued support. So this was kind of like a half apology, you know, saying we're sorry for this guy's comments, but we don't really disagree that the changes had to be made. We don't really disagree with censoring things in anime. We don't disagree with localizing things, even if they have to be dramatically changed from the original intended story. So this post ended up getting deleted, as you can imagine. That's why it's all blurry here, is because it's being archived. And then he added later on, because damage control, "For those still side-eyeing us, we hear you and we understand, but honestly, look at us." Come on, man! We not only released the two of the most offensive anime ever made, Violence Jack and Angel Cop Uncut, we restored them from 35mm. You know what we stand for, and it sure ain't censorship. Don't know about that. Kinda depends, doesn't it? It was okay to censor things in the anime and change the translation for the intended audience, intended response. Intended by who? Intended by who? By Discotek or by the author? Because it seems like you both are intending for different things entirely. But for those of you thinking, well, maybe they're not for censorship, maybe they're not for completely changing an anime. I mean, he made those statements, but he took them back later. Maybe he realized he was wrong. Well, what do you know? JelloApocalypse had more to say. Here's the even more damning part that makes them seem even worse. He was asked by a reader, was there ever any pushback in terms of accurately portraying the characters? Were you beholden to anyone to retain the integrity of Lovely Complex? And Blabber says, the Discotek guys mostly let Lenti do what she wanted, which kind of sounds like there's a severe lack of quality control. If you're just like, oh, free range, do whatever you want. Most anime distributors do tend to ask that you don't advertise changes, like making things less transphobic. You don't say. I think that is probably the real reason why he got fired. It's not because they were doing it in the first place. It's because they got caught in 4K. It's because they publicly came out with these statements and it went viral online, and it's horrific press for a dubbing company, for a localizer, to get caught purposefully changing things about the stuff that they're localizing. And so he says, this is because large swaths of the anime community are racist, sexist, transphobic, etc. This motherfucker just called you racist. Just because they want an accurate portrayal of an anime, an accurate portrayal of what the author intended and what they are actually trying to say, what their politics actually are, etc., etc. I don't want somebody else's politics to be inserted into someone else's written work. I want to actually know who the author is and what they're trying to achieve through their written work. Call me crazy, but I don't want to have a false perception of a person when I'm reading their manga. And you know, the anime that they're translating here, it's not written for children. We know that there's going to be some edgy comedy in there. We know that there's going to be some opinions that we disagree with. We're fully prepared to look at those and not freak out over them. What's much more frustrating is when it's purposefully hidden from us, because it is censorship. It is not your job to change the writing of something that you're localizing. And calling the majority of the anime community racist, sexist, and transphobic because they don't want you to change something from somebody else's, from another author's work? I mean, like, no author on the planet would want you to change their work. Discotek added a content warning on one of their discs and got flack for that, so they're understandably a little skittish now. Funny, Crunchy works like this too. Of course, Funimation and Crunchyroll are now the same entity. Most anime distributors don't care if you make things nicer or more gay or add more representation. They just ask you don't flaunt the changes or use buzzwords. You're genuinely not allowed to say hot button words like sexism or patriarchy anymore in most funny dubs, unless it's already in the subtitles. Imagine that! Imagine you're not allowed to use political buzzwords unless they're in the original version. Imagine that. You're not allowed to insert your politics unless that was the intention of the author? What? What? I would have never guessed. I can't just insert my politics into somebody else's written work? But me? What about me, though? It's so stupid. Those are words that brain-dead weebs get mad about and share on their various image boards. Well, there you have it. Apparently, when we want something to be accurate, we are being brain-dead. So when a scene that has nothing to do with sexism all of a sudden starts talking about sexism, we're the brain-dead ones. We're the weird ones for being like, why are you bringing up sexism in a scene that has nothing to do with it? The people who get mad about this don't actually have thoughts about these things or know why they hate them. They've just been told to hate specific words because those are the SJW words. It's very embarrassing, Lamau. Yeah, it's not like social justice warriors are told to hate certain words. That never happens. I wonder how long it'll take for all the "it's not true to the original" fuckers to come out of the woodwork and be like, woke translators ruining my anime? Idiots who assume all dubs are bad and all subs are good, or vice versa, don't actually have any analytical skills, and their opinion simply does not matter. Whoa. Or vice versa? So like even people who think that your dubs are actually good? After all that talk about how you made Lovely Complex so good and nobody would like it unless it was for your dub? Even those people, he's like, fuck those people. They suck too. They all suck. So I gotta say, his comments towards anime fans are obviously very disgusting. And his comments towards Lovely Complex, quite offensive and unprofessional. It's one thing to be like, yeah, I worked on Lovely Complex, but I honestly, personally don't like the show. It's okay if other people like it, but it's not personally my thing. You know, that would have been a professional way of going about it. Instead, he went out of his way to be like, that show sucks objectively, and my dub made it better, and the only way anyone could ever like that shitty author's work is because of my dub. But a lot of the comments made by JelloApocalypse, it kinda seems like he had just recently walked away from an argument that he lost, and he just had to like rant about it online somewhere, and I think he probably just thought his Patreon was a safe place to rant about it. Like nobody on his Patreon who's already supporting him with their money, nobody there would disagree with him, surely. He was wrong. He was very wrong. And that was a huge misstep. It looks like Discotek is going to have to do some serious damage control from here on out. To all of his frustrations about the anime community in general, I'll extend an olive branch and I'll say, yeah, I do agree that sometimes the reaction to localization is maybe too much. Maybe people are also a little bit quick to just label anything as social justice. But to say the majority of the anime community that because they want accurate translations, they must be racist, they must be sexist, they must be homophobic, that is absolutely insane. And if you genuinely believe that, then you do not belong in this community. I know people get a little bit when we say that, but if you believe that anime and the content that it has, and the fans that follow it, compromise your own personal morals, then it's not for you. I'm not here to tell you what your morals are, or what your moral code should be, but it is very normal to want to have an accurate translation of what an author intended. If you're not going to provide that for them, then they don't need you. In other news, let's talk about Reaper, Book 1, which is currently funding on Indiegogo, my fantasy series. If you yourself are into dark fantasy, I would highly recommend checking this book out. We're starting off with Book 1 with over 100 pages of content, and this will be ongoing with a preview of Book 2 at the end. So if you are interested in indulging in something a little bit new, we're 34% of the way to our goal, and we would love to keep that ball rolling. So definitely check out a link in the description description for Reaper Book 1, The Cursed Castle. Help me reach that goal if you can. Regarding the localization problem, once again, if this is always like really exhausting to talk about, I understand that not everything directly translates into English, but I find it very frustrating when people don't even want to try. When people let their own personal opinions cloud their ability to actually do their job properly. In my eyes, it doesn't have to be a one-for-one, it just has to be as close as it possibly could be. And if there's transphobia or sexism or racism in there, I don't care. I don't care because I'm not a little baby who's gonna cry every time they see something in a story that I don't agree with. Give me the opportunity to decide whether I like the show or not, properly translated, so that I can decide whether or not the author is a good writer. And if I don't think that they're good, I'll give it a bad review. Look at my channel, I've given plenty of manga bad reviews. It's not like I just let anything pass. But if you're not being genuine about what the author is actually trying to write, then there's going to be a lot of uncertainty in the anime community. They're not going to know whether or not they can trust the translations. They're not going to know whether or not the author was actually a good writer, or if the English localizers just fucked it up. And for those of you who have been commenting about the AI replacing a lot of localizers, I don't actually think that's gonna fix the problem. I know that a lot of people really want to believe that'll fix the problem, but we haven't really seen good things from AI lately since they can be trained to do exactly what the localizers have been doing. But maybe that needs a whole other video dedicated to that. For now, I'm just gonna leave it here. So like the video if you did enjoy or find this video fairly informative, comment down below your own thoughts about localization, back the Reaper campaign, cause I told you so, and I'll see you next time.